Verizon says it's 6 p.m. So we will call to order the 27th annual meeting of the Lake Lemon Conservancy District Board of Directors. We do have a quorum present both here and with Debbie online. Mike may also be joining us, but he was on call today, so that's obviously subject to his work. With that, we will begin with public comments. Any members of the audience that would like to make comments tonight? Seeing none, we will move to board election results for sub area 3 and sub area 7.
All right, both the election results are uncontested for sub area 3 and 7. We have Brett Hubert present with sub area 3. Can you give a little introduction, Brett? Or?
Sure. Hadn't really prepared anything. No, so we live over in Lakeview Hills area. We actually have a lake house there, live down on Kirk Creek Road, so we're local in Unionville, just have two different locations. I'm a pathologist at the hospital. I've been in Bloomington for almost 8 years now, or in Bloomington, Unionville area. And I guess I'm been on different boards for other organizations within the hospital and everything, and excited to sort of get more involved with the lake and listen to opinions and hopefully move things in the right direction.
Thank you. Happy to have you here. And then District 7, that Mike Blackwell is running uncontested, so there will not be any elections tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Which that brings us to the next item, oath of office for the 2 sub areas. So Brad, if you want to come over here, we'll administer the oath, and that way you can actually vote tonight. So if you'll repeat after me, I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
That I shall, to the best of my ability.
that I shall, to the best of my ability,
Strive to accomplish the purposes for which the district is established.
strive to accomplish the purposes for which the district is established,
And to properly operate and maintain.
and to properly operate and maintain
Its works of improvement.
its works of improvement.
Congratulations. Welcome to the board.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
You need some blood.
That's the first time I've administered, so I'll obviously make more gaps the next time. So I wouldn't have been able to do that either. So.
I think I was okay, but then I panicked. It was one word too long, and then I panicked, and then it wiped everything.
I understand. So looks like Mike hasn't been able to join us, so we'll administer his oath at the next meeting. We'll move on to approval of board minutes for the January 26, 2023 board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I would like to make a comment first.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so in, was it section 5, part B, it says that that we're planning to liquidate all of the equipment, excluding the small barge and case CX-80 excavator. And I think that should also include the large barge, because I asked specifically about that. So if that would be added in there, then I would second the motion.
Yep, we will amend that, and you are correct.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that friendly amendment? Very good. Sorry, I should have asked that first. So
No.
thank you. Any other discussion? With that, since Debbie is remote, we'll call the vote by person. Please signify aye if you approve. Brett?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Debbie?
Aye.
Mike, welcome for joining. We're voting on the minutes if you would like to vote on that.
There was an amendment on the table to the minutes stating the equipment sales also does not include the large barge. We had small barge and excavator in there. Malcolm amended that. We voted on keeping the large barge as well. So that amendment is on there for the minutes. Mike?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm an aye.
Good, and I am an aye as well, so that motion carries. Mike, you want to do your oath of office? We can jump back and make you official for your next 4-year term if you'd like.
That'd be fine.
Very good. Get the paperwork here. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear,
that I shall,
and I shall,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
strive to accomplish
strive to accomplish
the purposes for which the district
the purposes for which the district
is established,
is established,
and to properly operate and maintain
and to properly operate and maintain
its works of improvement.
its works of improvement.
Congratulations and thank you for continuing to serve on the board.
Year number 9.
You're the distinguished elder on the board now, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move on to treasurer's report. I'll turn it over to Debbie.
Okay. You have in your information the January financial statements. Not a lot has happened during this month, but I want to hit the highlights in the balance sheet. We have a total of $697,000 in our general account. You'll see included in the materials of reconciliation to that account as well. Sorry about that. I got to turn my phone off. And of that, 43,000 is in the cumulative conservancy improvement fund, and the remainder is in the general. That represents about half of what our budget is this year. We have $268,000 left in the construction account, and then a little over almost $125,000 in various savings accounts. So total checking and savings is $1,089,000. Our fixed assets are sitting as they always do at $1,080,000. And that's the cost, not any kind of depreciated value or market value of those items. So total assets of the district, almost $2.2 million. On the liability side, just some payroll withholdings, and then we've got our bonds payable of $1,090,000. So overall net worth, if you will, of $1,076,000, but that is based upon the fact that our fixed assets are really worth $1,080,000, which we all know they're not. So just want to keep hitting that home and having you guys keep that in mind. As far as the income statement goes, just for the month of January, it looks like the office did an awesome job in really accelerating the payments on the subleases, so that we had about $22,000 in income this month, $11,550 in January 23 in the sublease and access fees versus only $4,750 last year. And I think that's really, Adam, probably due to the automation of that process and just having Jessica on staff to get those out on a timely basis.
That's correct. Yeah, I'll give Jessica full credit for that. We've automated the sending out, the signature, and the payment process. So we're slowly getting to a paperless, and it makes things much quicker. So Jess isn't here, but I would like to thank her for that effort.
Right. And then the other interesting thing is, so far within January, we've got park reservation of income of about $6,600. And we also have other income about $2,371. I talked to Adam about that earlier. I think we might have a few classification issues there, but basically, we really upped the rental on IU rowing, and I think it's in there. Is that correct, Adam?
Yeah, our line item 4090 includes park reservations and special events. And this year we raised the 2-day special event for IU from $750 to $6,300. Wow. And they didn't bat an eye. Imagine that. So that revenue came in, and then besides that, we had some shelter rentals that are starting to come in as well for the year.
Overall, our expenses for the month of January were $42,000, leaving us in a deficit position of $20,000 for the month, which we, our taxes, we only get in twice a year. So not concerned about that. I think probably the biggest difference in the expense side, if you compare this January to the prior January, is we've got Ross's position as the operations supervisor, which we didn't have that expense. And then we had a big insurance payment of almost $20,000 during the month. Are there any questions or comments, or Adam, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. The insurance items, that's all within our estimated total premium. That's just a timing issue, whether we get the billing right at the beginning of January or February. And then really the other big difference is that we do have Ross's position. So I think you covered it pretty well, Deb.
All righty. Well, if there are no questions or concerns from the board, I guess I would like to move on to the January report of claims and ask for an approval of the vouchers totaling $34,976.09. And this is a little thing, but we had the lemon drop event, and so some of the income was from the lemon drop, but you notice that we had a little thing that was the lemon drop beanies that were $381, but I think we got all that money back and then some from running the event. And of course, I already mentioned the first insurance, and we continue to pay Christopher Burke because from an engineering standpoint, he really oversees the dredging pay applications and really gives us assurance that in fact, they have removed the amount of sediment and that their request for payment is appropriate. So could I have a motion, or if there are any questions?
We accept the report. I'll second.
Thank you.
Move to second, I can call the vote on this side. Brett?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Debbie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, passes unanimously. We'll move on to manager's report.
Can I ask a question? So lemon drop, is that the same as the polar plunge?
Yes, it was a lemon drop polar plunge, and we brought in $2,300 about from that, so pretty good. And I think the expenses were the beanies and hot chocolate. People loved it. I think we'll have a lot more people out next year, and it seemed like everybody that came out is gonna return. So it was a really fun event. We were kind of nervous with the ice. It melted off just in time. It was good. So for the annual report, we do have our normal text report that's in the board packet, but most information we're gonna go ahead and put into a PowerPoint, and me and Ross are both going to tackle those.
Now, will you be sharing your screen so we can see that, or no? Great, thank you.
So the 2022 annual report. In 2022, we did have 2 director positions that were filled. In District 2, we had Deborah Ladyman, and in District 6, we had Malcolm McClure. Sorry, some pictures were in the way. So those 2 positions were filled for 4-year terms. Thank you both for joining on that. For the board officers, we had Mary Jane Brown as chairman, Les Wadzinski as vice chairman, and Deborah Ladyman as treasurer. And then also like to thank Les served as the interim chair after Mary Jane had left.
Yeah, so this is kind of just a quick overview of our gatehouse operations at Riddle Point Park and really the overall park operations. So we had the park gatehouse staff from March 25th through November 13th. So that's a mixture of the office being open during the week and the gatehouse running on the weekends until, the park and the beach fully opens when it's staffed full time. And then, so that's when Riddle Point opened May 20th and remained open until September 18th. The shelter house was rented 18 times. We got a picture of there for a birthday party where they kind of jazzed it up, or sorry, 21 times. I was reading September 18th. We had 19 fishing tournaments, and this is like kind of a picture of a typical weigh-in by the boat ramp at the top there. And then on July 3rd, we had our big Independence Day fireworks. We changed this year to, rather than soliciting donations from the crowd, we had a entrance fee at the gatehouse to get into the park. So that was $20 for that day, and that generated $14,118 in income from that event, which was a much better way of doing it than we have done in the past. past.
Are you gonna still be taking donations or still?
Yeah, we still accepted donations, which is why that's not really a round number. There was folks around the lake and even some folks that day that donated over what was asked.
And I think it was close to $8,000 day of from cash donations. The remainder of that was from residents around the lake.
So last year we did do a number of improvements to the park that was kind of following the master plan that we had done in 2020. So we added 7 grills to the park. 6 of those are spread throughout the park. They're the small single slot style cast iron park grill that you see at state parks and parks around the state. And then we did do a triple bay one at the shelter house that's 3 times as large. It's basically just 3 of them welded together. So that when you rent the shelter house, you have a large grill there that's ready to go for you. This fall, we did expand the beach to the west end, kind of just following what was put into the master plan. There was kind of a natural gradient there that lended itself well to a beach expansion. So, you know, small amount of earthwork and then sand. It was really not an expensive project for what we got out of it. And then in the spring, we did renovations to the shelter house. So you can see, I tried to stitch together some photos here so you can kind of see the state that it was in at the beginning of the year. We did some furrowing strips on the ceiling. The 4x8 sheets of plywood were just kind of screwed up. So furrowing those in really helped give it a better look, but also keep, you know, vermin out of the crawl space up there, which helps out with the keeping it clean on the inside, I guess I'll say. There's bird problems in there always, but you know, it did make a difference. And then just paint and putting LED lights in rather than the fluorescent lights that were in there and in different states of, you know, operation. And we also have we got 10 new picnic tables and the bulk of those are in that shelter house now. They're 8 feet long. They weigh almost 300 pounds. They don't tend to move around the park much. So that's been helpful. So that's really kind of the big things that we did throughout the park for improvements. And this all came from that continuous improvement fund money that we have. We used aquatic control this year for submersed and emergent vegetation treatments around the lake. This is kind of just a treatment summary of there's all these pop-ups of what we did. So you can't see very well here, especially if you're in the back, but our total vegetation treatment costs this past year were $34,584.10. They always come twice on the first treatment for milfoil and submersed vegetation, then they come for the touch-up. There's in their what do they call that? Like their guarantee that it will die. So they came to some areas that we noticed that there wasn't effective treatment. And then towards the late summer into fall, they do the lotus and spatter dock treatments on that east end.
That is nice that aquatic control does a 90% kill guarantee. So if we don't think we've hit that threshold, they come back and they have never once questioned us about it or went out there and did any monitoring. So they're very good to work with.
What's I can't read that small fine print. What's the red versus the yellow markings?
That's the emergent versus the submersed vegetation. So all the yellow is submersed. So that's mostly milfoil. There's some areas that they use that aquathol is a little bit different of a product for vegetation that's not just milfoil, where the Procellacores, but the red and the yellow is basically milfoil or lotus in our case.
Okay, thank you.
Does this vary from year to year? Is this an average cost or?
This is it's kind of low this year. Our contracts are set not to exceed $50,000 in a given year, and then the final amount is really based on a lot of factors, including weather. So if we have a really wet spring and there's a lot of silt in the water, you don't have much light penetration, then you don't have as much growth early on. So the timing of that and the amount of vegetation that we get will be pushed further into the year. Versus if we have a really dry spring and you have a lot of light penetration, you'll have the milfoil starting to pop up very early. And also having the dredging will impact that as well, because a lot of these plants, especially the lotus, won't grow in water depth more than like a foot and a half. So once we dredge out these areas that are greater than 5 feet, it'll decrease that potential area for the lotus growth as well. And then also on the new chemicals that they're using for the Eurasian milfoil, you do tend to get about a 2-year kill on that Procellacor. Whether it's, 100% for the 2-year kill, that never happens, but you will have the majority of an area killed off for 2 years with that Procellacor, and that's kind of why they transitioned to that chemical. And then we did the community.
Yeah, I can still talk. We've talked about the polar plunge some tonight, but that was a new event that we added this year. And then May 6th, we'll have the Riddle Point Boogie out at Riddle Point Park. So that'll run all day, 12 to 10. We're gonna have 5 different bands, food trucks, a beer garden out there. So we're very excited about that event. It's just trying to do some events to bring some more community participation in the lake, and kind of those like shoulder seasons or off seasons where there's not as much events going on at the park, and it's just sitting kind of idle, trying to get people in there and new faces in the building.
And I'm really trying to look at how we can drive revenue generating events without increasing boat traffic and congestion. So that's why we're really starting to look at how we can best utilize the park. And it's helped a lot having us have more time with this dredging contract out, so you can really focus on the other aspects of the operation, which really benefit. So get your tickets to the Riddle Point Boogie though. We're gonna do a little plug right there. Beer garden sponsored by Oliver Winery, who's actually donating all their wine for the event. Upland Brewery and Cardinal Spirits. And they're working on food trucks, and should be a really good time.
Hey, Adam, why don't you
Yes.
touch on the fact that we're not at risk on any money on that? Like who's producing it?
With a production company in Bloomington, Soundboard Strains Productions. And it's something that we've known that he's done other music festivals around the area, so he's really trying to build up his business. So I think the whole budget for this was a little over $8,000, kind of the initial budget. I'm sure we'll go for that. The Conservancy has only paid $1,200. I said we could do that deposit for the artists, get them locked in, and then the production company is on the contracts for the others. But we want to make sure that we raise money on this, and any of the proceeds from this event will be donated to the Lake Limit Enhancement Fund. So it is a fundraising concert. So we've had some calls about the $100 boat parking passes on the beach. Those are moving pretty good though, and there's only 14 spots. And it is for benefit. So I think ticket prices are $35. So we kept it very reasonable. So we've covered that, and then we'll get kind of into that stage later on. I don't think we're going to move forward with that solid structure this year and look at renting a stage for that as well, which the LLCD would cover. But overall, pretty minimal risk on our end. And I think with the interest that we've had from around the lake and to national area in general, I think we're in pretty good condition. I'm going to give an update on the Lake Limit Enhancement Funds. We have 2 funds, one with the Monroe County Community Foundation and one with the Brown County Community Foundation. Our 2022 beginning balance in Monroe was $134,000. The ending balance was $93,000. Their investments are very conservative. The majority of that loss was that we took a $40,000 grant, which we had in our budget to help offset the cost of the dredging project. So we did receive a grant, and that was our first time kind of working with them to take funds out of the enhancement funds, and it was very nice to work with them. So I'm happy with how that's going and the level of engagement that we have. The Brown County Community Foundation, our 2022 beginning balance was $24,600, and the 2022 ending balance was $30,600. And we've actually been meeting there recently with Christy, the consultant that we had to bring on to help get this initial capital campaign interest going. And I guess I'll talk about that just real quick while we're here. Right now we're developing the survey that's going to go out to the freeholders, as well as kind of our snapshot. Here's what we do, information that we can use for advertising. So that's going real well. We are expecting the surveys to come out in April. So be on the lookout for those, and these will be looking at essentially assessing, do you want to pay through everything for taxes? Is there a willingness to give and donate? What would you like to give and donate to, whether it be dredging or funds that go to capital improvements in the park or stuff like that, naming rights. We're really trying to assess all of that in a feasibility study light to see how much time, effort, and money we should put into that to continue that. So it's been great working with Christy, and everybody will see the results in the survey coming out in the next couple of months. Here we have a 2022-2021 revenue comparison. Our overall revenue was up 3%. We did have a big increase in sublease access fees. I think one was we finally got all the docks GPS, dealt with all the mapping, got everything off hand-drawn documents. So that's finally all locked in. So we actually had an increase of about $9,000 for subleases. Marina club fees went up. Those were both due to amount of slips, and we did raise fees for those. Launch fees were up. So launch fees are primarily non-resident boaters, people that need to use the ramp every time they put in and out. So it's good to see a 5% increase in that. Property taxes, those went up. And I think the community foundation, that was our first grant that we had there. Fishing tournaments did increase. And then park reservations, we've seen a really big increase, almost 300%. And that rate went up to 175 this year, it was 150 last year. But having those renovations, people have been very interested. And I think it was rented out at least one day every weekend throughout the entire summer. And we've already got a couple rentals in this year, and we've had multiple people interested in hosting weddings out there. And we had some weddings last year as well. So just having those little improvements there have really driven the park reservations. Park admission fees were up 9.2% as well, or about $6,000. The dredging riprap income, we didn't have any dredging riprap income because we did no in-house dredging last year. We were focused on the hydraulic dredging project, which has been going great. So we didn't have income from that. And then the other income is $31,000. And that was primarily the $30,000 rental from the large barge that was paid for by Heartland Dredging. So looking at the dredging operations, really in 2021, we were still doing in-house dredging, although we focused a lot on private dredging to see if we could generate revenue and offset those costs so it could be a revenue generating item. And then in 2022, we did not do any of that. The $36,000 is what we still spent essentially with our equipment operations. The large part of that for the dredging supplies and dredging equipment maintenance, about $12,000, was for our KCX80, the small excavator, which we utilize a lot and we were keeping. And that was replumbing hydraulics for easy connection onto our small barge and adding a hydraulic thumb on there to make that worthwhile. Besides that, it seemed like every time we fired up a Komatsu, we blew a hydraulic hose. So me and Ross became very proficient at changing out hydraulic hoses on large equipment. But hopefully we won't have to do much more in the future. When we look at the total savings was $104,000. We did have $85,000 of dredging income in 2021. So total savings were about $20,000. I mean, so it was kind of more or less a wash on what we spent and what we had incoming, but also taking out that entire management of the operation, which was huge for everything else. For our 2022 sediment management project, and again, this is kind of the overarching project of the whole year, we did get 60,100 yards removed from the East Bay. This is a picture of the upland disposal site on South Shore Drive. The hydraulic barge was mobilized on May 4th and they worked through December 6th. We were afraid there was going to get ice coming on, but we almost could work through the season. The total cost of dredging that we paid for was $330,000. in 2023. And the remaining capacity that we have, and I want to clarify that the current contract that we're under is a little over 140,000 cubic yards total under this contract. But the remaining capacity that we have is 250,000 yards between the large pond on the large causeway and that upland site. That's why we're really going to be doing a push, the next coming years to maximize the sediment outtake from the lake into these areas. And again, the upland site, we built that with the intention of reusing that. So once that's full, our plan is to do a large scale excavation, get rid of that sediment, and then be able to reutilize that in the future. We've also began looking at a North Shore site off Possum Trot Road. There's an open field there that's owned by City of Bloomington Utilities. Ideally, we would love to get to a position where we have 2 operating upland sites where we can be dredging in one, clearing out the other, and clean and repeat, rinse and repeat. That way, that would be the most efficient, continuously dredging to try to, hopefully eventually take out more than is coming in and try to gain some on that. So we have moved forward. We've had utility lines located, and then we're in discussions now with City of Bloomington Utilities as far as letting us utilize that area. So we will continue to work on that as we go forward. Yeah, very good.
You ever thought about, we talked about earlier about putting in some sort of like a silt trap on Possum Trot coming down,
We're definitely looking into all those.
especially if you do that.
Yeah, we're trying to look into all the options. Once you get into like in-stream manipulation, it triggers a lot of permitting aspects. I can see somebody laughing over there. So it's definitely something that we're considering, and maybe we can do some type of diversions once we have that in.
Yeah.
But for now, we're primarily focusing on just getting another site that we can put online. So we have been asked, trying to give a better image of what has been dredged. In the next photo, we have this on the scale or where our actual zones were. So this is the area that was dredged in 2022. So that 60,000 yards essentially got all this area that was in collaring from a couple inches. I think the deepest point in that area was about 3/4 of a foot, and got that whole area back down to 5 feet plus. They've been digging at about 5.5 to 6 feet to ensure that we have that 5-foot area for safe boating. So here's a little blown up area of that. This is just the depth of the radar on the bars. So you do see these areas that are like 4.7, 4.9, like kind of right at that 5-foot threshold. There's also times where the lake level was lower, a handful of inches. When we do our actual billing, the engineers account for the actual lake level in that to make sure that we're billing for the correct amount of sediment that's coming out.
Question,
Before you leave that.
Yeah.
yeah, could you go back?
Yes.
So perspective is on the drawing to my left, there's a little square that's red. And that looks kind of small compared to the east end of basin number 1. And our goal is to, can you kind of.
It's on the next
Okay.
slide. You'll see it a little better.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Well, it was essentially the same thing. The question is whether how close you can get to the creek, and is there any need to go westward from that, on that strip?
So we actually, so on here, the zones 1 through 5 are the initial zones that were on our plan with Shrewsbury. We ended up starting further west because that's where we ran into the unsafe boating areas. So this area was shifted out a little bit. I don't know if there's one more. Oh, sorry, was it? There was essentially.
it should bring the pre up first.
So essentially that spit of sediment that was coming out was protruding much further into that east bay than based off these bathymetric surveys in 2019. So we started once we're in that safe area because there was no reason to have it go to 2 feet and then drop down to 2 feet. So this is with that 60,000 yards. And then we will continue to move east. This blue line represents the Lotus line. On the diagrams that we're looking at, we should be able to get through the majority of zone 2 with this initial contract.
It's wrong here. It was right on the other one. Is that right?
This scale,
I mean, you surely didn't dredge down past, this is all shifted up and shrunk, right?
well, these areas of the yellow, that red area was just the actual bathymetric study.
Oh,
So this square
yeah.
is where we
Oh, I
actually
see. It
dredged.
does go below.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does go below the point, yeah. So that's where we've had. Currently, we'll continue to move east and north. The bathymetry kind of cuts into the northeast. So a lot of these zones, like zone 2 and 3, a lot of this is 5 foot plus in the western parts of these zones. So as we move up through the zone 2 and 3, the whole operation will shift towards that vegetation maintenance line. And then ideally, through the funding resources that we have and mechanisms that we input, we'll just keep marching on after this contract is over this year until we can get to that full 250,000 yardage plus in the 2 basins.
If we can get the funds to do it.
Correct. But the project has been going really good. We actually just had one of the interesting things about the overflow pond is we will have to plant that and then put it into a deeded conservation restriction. So just a couple weeks ago, we had a surveying company come out, survey all those areas. And right now we are drafting our deeded restriction for that area, essentially saying that it will stay as a wetland and what it was intended to be in perpetuity. And that was one of the requirements of our nationwide Army Corps permitting. So once we finish with the dredging, we will have to go in, we have a year to go in and plant that. The initial estimates on that planting were close to $100,000 for the planting and a 3-year maintenance term with a contractor. And
You don't-
those numbers are kind of in the PowerPoint from January. So if you want to go back, that is on our
Right.
website. You can look into those. Yes.
Do we get any credit for that?
No, because it's mitigation for disturbance that we are doing.
It's kind of, you can't go back and kind of.
No, that's the tough part about this too, is looking at like, there's grants out there to create wetland, but there's not grants out there that supersede mitigation requirements. So it's kind of tough there's not like a whole lot of grants for planting something that's part of a mitigation requirement.
It's nice to trade some of that for that little tip, the possum trot site.
Yeah. And actually, when we were looking at the possum trot site, there was close to a little over 5 acres that are not in the current floodway mapping. And the rim of our South Shore site is right around 5 acres too. So we should be able to build a comparable disposal basin if we can get the authorization in that area. So.
You mean,
all good things and
you mean build something like we just built for $500,000?
correct. Ultimately, that would be the goal. Yeah, when that happens, I mean.
Yeah.
These are relative and sliding, but we are working on that because that would be in the best interest of the lake ultimately is to have 2 of these sites for the most productivity and a sustainable activity.
Well, you don't have to answer this tonight, Adam, but what I'd be interested in knowing is if we pretty well know our costs to fill up what we have now, but how far would that take us through the zones, or would we just go deeper where we're at? I mean, or do we need to do more studies to figure it out? Or, would
Are you referring to if we had that additional capacity from a North Shore site or?
Currently, if we just filled up what we have,
just filled up the overflow pond and what we have? Yeah,
We
how?
would be into zone 3, I believe, from what we were looking at. I think on the zones 1, 2, and 3 on the Shrewsbury report and their yardage estimates were actually really good. It's close to 270, upper 200,000 cubic yards. And that's kind of right in line with what we have between both of our sites. So if we can utilize the full volume in the pond and the upland site, we should have the majority of that eastern bay zones 1 through 3 to a 5-foot plus depth.
Okay, thank you.
And then that's the majority of the big projects that were going on. Besides that, in the actual report, we just talked about our service providers. We have First Insurance Group for insurance, Watkins Accounting for accounting, Carmen Parker and Bloomington for legal, People's State Bank and Old National Wealth Management for our financial entities. Any questions or?
Any questions from the board?
All
The
right,
only-
thank you.
The only thing I was gonna add was on the fundraising, I feel like Malcolm and Steve and I have been involved, and Ross and Adam have just done the heavy lifting with her, but it's been really beneficial. It's not just about fundraising, it's defining who we are, what's important to us at the lake, you know, what we can use in marketing, and I think it's really gonna propel us into this vision, mission, you know, and get us to the point where as a board, we can have more of a strategic plan. So it's been a really good exercise thus far, I think, for the $6,000 that we're spending.
It has, and outside of just what we can put on the numbers too, just talking with the freeholders and the public, there definitely seems to be like just a lot more of a buzz and kind of good energy going around the lake with what we're hearing, people being engaged, activities going on, actually seeing the hydraulic dredging come into fruition, seeing them out there digging after what seemed like an eternity, planning this out and finally getting it on the ground. So, I mean, it was a big year for the Conservancy District to have all of it online, have the hydraulic dredging going, and then allowing us to focus a lot more on the operational side. So I think we're in a very good place moving forward.
One thing that I talked to Adam about again today, and Malcolm and Steve, and we all brought it up in our last meeting a week or two ago, was I'm a little concerned that some of our folks in the district are going to open their tax bills on April 1st, and they won't have looked at the video and they won't have followed what we're doing. And I'm concerned about getting a little bit bolder communication out to them. I mean, maybe it's too late because they're going to come in about a month, but I'm just like, hey, if you haven't seen this, and Adam had a good idea about maybe tying it all in with the survey and everything that we're trying to assess the taxing versus, you know, gifting. So I think it needs to go out in some form soon. And I don't know if the board agrees or not.
From the management perspective, I'm a little bit hesitant to send out an email that says, hey, look how we doubled your taxes, because we've been talking about it for a while and gave examples and videos on how to look up your property values, how to look up the tax assessments, what the impacts are going to be. I'm not sure there's a lot of benefit.
I guess I would question, do you get that from your city?
No,
Your-
we've done everything we
Or your
do.
county? There's a legal process for doing it, and that process was followed.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
A very small sample space of about 5 or 6. I've talked to some people and I told them, you know, we're doubling the conservancy part of the taxes in order to do dredging. This is what I get for that, you know.
That sounds
Yes,
about
that's a
right.
good way
Yeah.
of doing it. So.
Good.
And we can tie the information into the communications with the survey, and, you know, by the fact that we're looking at how we're gonna fund things.
Here's
moving
where your
forward.
tax dollars are going.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we send out an email and say we're doubling your taxes, but
There's some more sample space sitting out there.
our office hasn't been burned down yet. So.
I suppose thinking ahead and having a calculated response to the inevitable emails, you know, so you're not doing that on the fly. At least
Yeah,
know
that's
this
very
is-
true.
you know,
that's a good point.
have a thought out response. This is what we send out when we get feedback.
I like that, that's a good idea. And then we have a unified communication in case people are coming to the board members, but we can work on something for that too and send to the board members and That way we're all operating on the same front there.
Can I add just a comment there? Debbie, I think the big kicker was when we opened our bills telling us that they'd like triple our value of our land overnight, because they hadn't been out to see what the land looked like recently. So I think that's, people are predisposed to expecting an increase because our evaluated
The value,
went
Yeah.
up significantly last year, so maybe you can tie that in. Remember when you got sticker shock with that letter, well, this is what's happened.
true.
Yeah. And
Good
to that
point.
point, the rate did not double.
Right.
We've actually had that in the past too, where our special benefits tax, we request a certain amount of money.
That's right.
And then they base the rate off the assessed values. And there's been times where we've increased our ask and the rate has actually gone down because of assessed values.
Because the township didn't get a lot from that.
Taking questions from the audience?
Not really. I just got a statement. Allow me a minute.
Does it have to do with what we're currently talking about?
Some of it does.
I'll defer to
We've had comments, so sure.
I'm just, sorry, Todd Fisher.
Yeah.
I'm just running way late today. I tried to get here on time, but obviously I had to go to work. Or come work late. I would like, before the meeting's over, I know public comment was at the beginning. I would just like to maybe have 3 minutes of your time. But on what you're talking about on the taxes, I understand it because it's been an issue going on in the past. You're not necessarily raising their taxes, but the assessment is higher. So therefore, if your assessment's higher, you're gonna pay more. We understand that. But only thing I want to say was, you know, if you keep that in mind, because I'm late, I would just like to have, 3 minutes for public comment at any time you give me. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the agreements that I have in the manager's report. First up, we have our annual vegetation agreement with Aquatic Control. The terms on that are still the same. It's annual contract for treatment not to exceed $50,000. If there's any questions, I'll take those. If not, I would like to recommend and ask for a motion to approve the Aquatic Control Vegetation Agreement in an amount not to exceed
I will move
50,000.
Vegetation, we adopted vegetation control to an amount not to exceed $1,000.
Have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the agreement up to $50,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll do the roll call vote. Brett?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Debbie?
Aye.
Like Mike had a run. I'm an aye, so passes unanimously.
All right, next up, we have our 2023 mowing contract agreement. We generally bid this out every 3 years, and if the contractor keeps his rates the same, we'll allow a couple of years for renewal, just to kind of lock in those prices. At this threshold, we're not required to bid it out, but we just want to make sure that we're getting the best rate that we can every now and then. For this year, I would like to recommend that we go ahead and approve our mowing contract extension with Nate Anderson Excavating and Lawn Care for the dollar amount of $10,860.
Do you have a motion?
So I'm happy with what they did last year.
Oh, they're great. They're really good.
In that case, I will so move.
Actually, I think I heard Steve first, so
Oh,
are you happy to be second?
I'll be happy to second that.
Malcolm seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Brett?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Debbie?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Motion carries. And
And then the last thing that I have, and this will actually get tabled, but I'll talk about real quick what we're looking at. So we have been talking about how to, I'm sure that, how to kind of drive revenue generation in the park without increasing the boat traffic. So one of the things that is in the park master plan and that we'd like to consider for the future, and again, this could be pushed back, 'cause this could be something that would be a good potential for naming rights, donations. I think people like to see tangible items for donations a lot of times. So we do have multiple shelters in our master plan on the park. One of the things that we would like to look at eventually, and I'll just jump to this, is creating a pavilion on the tip of Rural Point that would be utilized for both kind of a stage and a rental pavilion. We were initially, when we were designing this, it was a lot cheaper. We're kind of looking at a stage that would be facing inland, and then we're like, well, for rental purposes, we may as well make it kind of tall on both sides and arch out so you could turn bands around or music and actually play to the water too for future events on the water, then also be more susceptible for rentals for like weddings and that kind of thing. So what we have been looking at, and for future reference, we got a quote for a 25 by 25 foot structure, and the cost was $33,000. And that actually included the concrete, stamping the concrete to look like all the lines, and that we had all timber frame framing on it, and then the cedar, I always call it car siding, but tongue and groove as well on the insides, board and battened on this top area that would match the park or the gatehouse. That way we can keep that same thing going. But since we're looking at raising funds and donations for this first event, we're just gonna move forward with a mobile stage rental, which will definitely suffice. And then we can group together and kind of look at how we want to prioritize capital improvements in the park.
Did that estimate include running electric out there?
We are running, that's been approved, so we will have electric out there within the next month to that area. That proposal did include running conduit through the ground and embedding it in the cement, so you would have recessed electrical areas on that for all your electric needs.
You're running electric underground or over the?
It's very pricey to go underground. Everything else in the park is above ground as well. So really the only additional run that they would have now that we are gonna do with the electric is from the bathhouse pole right across the isthmus to one pole there. So really the only new line is gonna be like that 100-foot space, and we're gonna set the pedestal right there. So we are moving forward with having the pedestal there. We've had multiple rentals where people rent out that entire section, and we did a large scale special event fee specifically for that this year, because people like to come out and have family reunions, or we had a Burmese tribe that came out and rent that whole area. And there's not electric, we're bringing out generators and stuff. So I think it'll really promote kind of holding special events in that area. So it really opens up the park area. So we will have electric.
It sounds like, from what you said earlier, that the pavilion is already, when we renovated already, has been rented out almost every weekend.
Yes.
Every weekend. So that means there's probably more demand, and for something that would be out there, it would be utilized not just for occasional concert here and there. There'd be other opportunities to rent that out. So there's some income generation
Yeah.
almost every weekend.
I know we had like at least 3 times that I distinctly remember where people called up to rent the shelter house and it was already rented. So there has been, and this is like kind of the Rural Point Park and things of that nature in general. It's like, it's kind of feast and famine. So you do a lot of your business in a small period of time. So, you know, the things like the grills and the shelter house, they are used very highly, you know, when they're used. So I think, you know, having an alternative, and when we looked at kind of changing it from a lean-to style to more of a pavilion style, I think out there that would really drive home, like weddings out there. Right now, it's, you can have one out there, but there's like really no backdrop and there's no electric. That's like another big thing. So I think it would really help. you
I
know,
think it'd be an
those
ideal
areas.
location.
Yeah,
I'd
it-
love
it
to
would.
rent that. In this, one of the emails, I think Les is the one who said this versus the docking, building the docks for the lake owners or whatever, the people. Is this one or the other, or can we do both of those?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. If you were to do both of them in one season, that would be the bulk of the funding that we currently have and will have this year for the continuous improvement fund, the cumulative improvement fund. Right now we have close to $40,000, maybe a little over 40, and then we'll be receiving, I want to say it's 57,000 this year in taxes, kind of half and half between June and July. So it's not a one or the other thing. I want to say what we're kind of thinking out and talking with Debbie is maybe this would be opportunities for people to do kind of naming rights and donations. If we wanted to.
How much would it cost me to get my name on a grill?
On a grill? If you buy it, we'll put your name on it.
Well, I guess, you know me, I made it pretty clear. I think we need to generate alternative streams of revenue because, we are raising taxes a lot, but we're in the middle of this major fundraising analysis, if you will, and we're trying to send out a survey. And I think we need to test what the appetite of the freeholders are. And then I really think we need a strategic meeting. I don't want to be reactive and say, oh, somebody came to the board and wanted boat docks and let's put 6 in and we're not going to get any more revenue and it's going to cost us $56,000. Like we can't be reactive. We have to have our priorities. I went back and Mike, I know you were on the committee and you lead your parks, in Carmel Clay and, by the biggest thing was the bathrooms, and then I think that there was confusion as I read it on the boat docks because it's like, do they want some docking space where boats are going in, where the ramp is? Or, I think there's just some ambiguity there. So I just think as a board, we need to kind of think through what can we afford, what improvements can we make? Because if we saved our money for 5 years, maybe we could redo the bathrooms too, so we need to prioritize and not just be reacting as we go. That's my thought. And Adam seemed to think that we would be able to, have a meeting, orient, the new members and, try to really strategically think that through.
I think that's a wise approach. And I think it's valuable to get the information from the survey before we make the investment so that we truly can prioritize based on feedback we're receiving. So obviously
Okay.
we're receiving feedback through the master plan, but this is additional and more current feedback as well. So I don't think that's unwise. I think that's a wise approach.
Okay.
Awesome. So as of now, we're gonna use we'll keep that, we're gonna use a stage for this first event coming up. And then the good thing too, as we kind of get into the bathhouses are pricey when we started looking at that. So it's definitely gonna take a little bit of time to raise money for that. And I don't know a whole lot of people that want their name on the bathhouse. I hope they're out there. But with that fund, it's a set rate for that continuous capital improvement fund at essentially 3.3 cents per $100 of assessed value. So that's actually jumped up just $7,000 in this past year. Last year we received 49 and change. I think off the top of my head, and this year we're getting 57 and just based off that assessed value. So as long as we keep progressing the lake and assessed values, maybe that time frame will be shortened down a little bit till we get some large projects.
We could use it more creative. We don't put your name on the bathhouse unless you give us money to. So
Well, that's right.
Six story.
And that's all I got for the manager's report. Did everybody in the crowd get a ticket for the boat pass run?
Todd.
You know one?
I was late.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do the drawing. We can always do 2 drawings on that. If you win one, come up with us at the end of the meeting and you can sign off on the voucher. Those are good for a tower boat or sailboat pass, not jet skis, for 2023, sorry. And then you can just bring those vouchers when you come to purchase your pass. So.
All right, pass number 1. We'll go to
Shoes.
2382. The last 4.
All right, what's your name?
Adams,
Adams?
Michael, Joanna.
Congratulations. At the end of the meeting, just come up here and sign this and.
And then our second boat pass will be last 4 digits, 2378. Draw again.
All right, that's all I have.
Very good. Any additional questions for Adam before we move on? That takes us to the next meeting, which will be Thursday, March 23rd, 2023, 6 p.m. here at the City of Bloomington Utilities Building. And now we are to election of board officers for 2023.
Do we have any recommendations for board officers? Anybody would like to put their name in or?
Well, I think that I would like to nominate Michael Klitzing to be president. Maybe Les to be vice president. I would be willing to serve again as treasurer if the board wants me to. But I think with Michael's background, knowledge of government, the rules and regulations, the park operations and things that and he's indicated that he would now have the time to do that, I believe. I think that I'd like to nominate that slate.
I'll second it.
I was gonna second.
So we have a motion and second. Any additional discussion?
No, just to clarify the motion, it's for the president and the vice president. Right, and secretary.
And treasurer.
And treasurer.
All three.
Yeah.
Correct.
Let us know. Just let us know.
No, he didn't know yet.
He said he would be willing to serve.
There you
As long as you give them a six pack.
Any additional discussion? Do a roll call vote. Brett.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Malcolm.
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
I'm an aye. I'm assuming you all accept your nominations.
Be happy to. I can affirmatively do so. And I will vote an aye as well. So thank you very much for the honor to serve this board. With that, there was a request from one of our constituents, since he wasn't able to join us at the beginning of the meeting. Is there any objection to? Seeing none, floor is yours.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Again, my name's Todd Fisher. I think it's District 6. I should know since I've been here for 30 years. But real quick, I just want to touch on what they had tabled or put a freeze on back a while back on the sublease docks. The last time I was here, I talked to the board and we got a sublease for the fire department, which we appreciate, very much so. I'm asking or wanting to talk to you about a sublease for my property. Means that you quit doing the dredging. We won't even get into that, but the dredging's not gonna happen for my property now. I'd like to see about getting a sublease for my property. That way, when I sell it, I've got something to give the new owners saying, hey, you've got lake rights to this lease down here. It's gonna cost you, $150, $200, whatever it is at that time. But it really makes a burden, especially when you're trying to make revenue on trying to sell a piece of property that now I have no lake access if we are in a drought. But if I can get a sublease for that, then it would still, they'd have an option. That's number one that I would like to see if the board could maybe loosen up the reins a little bit and maybe get a sublease going for that piece of property. The other point you guys was bringing up about your, I'm gonna call it your Riddle Point Pavilion. I think is a great idea. That would be an excellent spot. And not only, like you were saying, the Riddle Point place that we have now is booked quite a bit. But if you have this one, it's a better prime location, you could get more out of it. You could maybe rent, whatever you're renting the beach one for, you rent this one for even more because it's such a nice prime location. You've got water on three sides of you, and that would make a lot of sense. I'm all for that. But mainly I wanted to get here because as you know, my place is for sale. This is something I can bring back to the prospective buyers. Hey, on the dates that we've got a bad, water draw, you can't get out. You can always sublease down here. You've got that as a backup.
I'll reach out to you, and for the past subleases that we've had during this moratorium, I'll set up a meeting with you, myself, and the district direct where we would be in that area. We'll meet there, and then as long as there's no concerns from that rep, we can come back and come to the board with a recommendation.
And if we could do that in the next 30 days, that would be great.
We have another one to do.
And you might take that and read that between the lines.
Yeah.
Is that-
Thank you.
Just to-
I appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak after, for being late.
Does the board have the, let's see, legal responsibility to be able to grant this sublease? I mean, can we do that? Is that part of the legal aspects of the board? I mean, I'm just asking because I don't know.
I think the issue came up, Steve, that we put that moratorium on it because we had all these questions from my district really on a lot of the subleases. So we did the whole GPS mapping and everything and said, how many leases we have out there? I guess, we collected more money on them. And so I think Adam and Ross have done a lot of work to see what we have available. We don't have a lot available, but I think at the last board meeting, we basically approved Adam working with the district, to approve that sublease, and it went through, so.
So signatures on the subleases, City of Bloomington Utilities has ultimate authority because it's their property that it sits on, and they have utilized subleases as leverage for encroachments, et cetera, on property. So when people apply for that, the city has first signature, and then I sign off on that as well. We went to the moratorium because we are down to the nitty gritty with available sublease spaces. And I didn't bring anything at this meeting, but at the next meeting, we're gonna propose that moving forward, I think the best way is to have myself, the landowners, and the district rep from the area where the sublease would be placed to meet together, talk over if there's any concerns, make sure there's room for safe parking, proper locations, and it was actually a really smooth process. We just approved one on the Short Causeway when I met with Les and some new residents that came in. And I actually have a meeting coming up that we need to schedule with a resident in Malcolm McClure's area that's also looking for one. So moving forward, we'll probably do that where we meet with the district rep and the landowners and we come and then have a recommendation.
It sounds like the utility company or whatever board is the one that actually signs it off. Wow. So do we really have any role in this? I'm just.
Yeah, they essentially will approve anything that we recommend unless they have an ongoing action.
So we can make a recommendation for, we can't grant. We can just.
Correct, they have to sign off on them ultimately. They have never denied one based off our recommendation unless they're dealing with
Was that,
taxes that hasn't been paid, or one time there was a deck that was built on city property and they had to remove the deck before they put that back in. So they really leave the management of that up to us, but they do have ultimate authority to.
was it last month or December that we kind of went through this process and we had the one, we brought it here?
I think it was last.
Yeah,
month
that
it
was last
I
month,
think
right?
it was too. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's basically following kind of that same.
But we'll come back with a modified resolution for that proposal and process.
So effectively, it's a two-step approval,
No, I-
a three-step
yeah, I just
approval to
wanna-
recommendation from the conversation with the district rep
Right.
and the individuals involved. It comes to the board for our approval and then
Yeah.
final approval.
Just want to make sure we're all clear on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, excellent question.
Nothing
With
else.
that, that concludes our action items for today. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any objection?
One comment.
Yes, sir.
It looks like it's 7:07. This is your first meeting you conducted. I think you should use this as a goal for every meeting.
when I was president of the Brownsburg Park Board, we usually had meetings of right real close to an hour. So
All right.
I like efficiency when it's appropriate.
Okay, can we vote on that?
Barring any objections, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you.
So what were the names on these?